Hey everyone, thanks for taking time to connect in the middle of the week. Today we preview our worship this week, and we are talking about self-control. That is the last of the fruits of the Spirit, at least for this series. Self-control is what ends the list that Paul gives to the Galatian community. You will notice in Scripture that there are other things noted as fruits of the Spirit. But today we end, or this Sunday and this week, we end the series with a look at self-control. And one of the themes that you will hear in worship that I reflect a little bit today as well is that self-control to me is the difference between a measured response and a knee-jerk reaction. And it is really easy to react to things. And to me, self-control is that element that allows me to be in control of my own response. And so I'm thinking about the word that comes to mind, the imagery that comes to mind is, what does it mean, self-control? What does it mean for self-control to allow us to sort of harness who we are so that we can respond appropriately, so that we can use our power and our gifts appropriately in response to a situation? It is harnessing it, not like, as you heard with Kate and I in our conversation around gentleness, not simply to diminish something, to make something smaller, to make something fit a space, to make ourselves smaller to fit a space, but self-control is that characteristic that allows us to be really purposeful, really intentional in the ways in which we respond to circumstances in front of us. So that's a theme that you will hear in worship on Sunday, particularly around what does it mean to respond versus react, and what is the role of self-control in it. The other thing that I'm thinking about as I reflect on self-control today is that self-control is also something that calls for us to honor the limits of our own human self. It doesn't mean that we need to stay always within those limits. We can always be hoping to learning, growing, maturing, better practicing at these different fruits of the Spirit. But self-control is something about acknowledging, honoring, recognizing the place where we ourselves are as human beings right now. And it is honoring that so that we can move to whatever perhaps next step, next level, next part of our journey might be. But it is not rushing, it is not placing an expectation that is unreasonable for where we truly are. And so I'm thinking as well that self-control allows us space and grace to acknowledge our humanity. I've been thinking a bit about how in order for us to honor God and God's divinity, God and God's godliness, it means also being able to give proper space for our own humanity. Not to neglect it, not to make it larger, aggrandize it, but to allow it to be human, to allow us to be our full human selves. And so I think of self-control as that space that acknowledges where we are, so that then we can harness the work of the Spirit, the call of God, that we might be intentional, purposeful in our next steps of responding. So that's what I'm thinking about with self-control. Some of my thoughts are all mixed up right now, but I would love to hear what comes to mind for you with self-control. Is this something that comes naturally? Is this a challenge for you? Are there people that you look to as examples of self-control? Or how do you know? How do you test whether you are participating with the Spirit in terms of self-control? I'm really curious about all of these things, and like all of the other fruits before it, this one is much larger than we can ever get into, much deeper and wider, more rich than we could get into in a single week. But I would love to hear where you're at right now, and I look forward to our time together on Sunday. All right, may you have blessings upon this week. Bye.